Ah yes, football and politics. If you're anything like me, the two things most likely to cause an argument between you and your dad. There are some people who say the two should never mix, and if you're one of those people, it probably would have been easier to just not click on this video, rather than clicking on it, just to comment that you don't think football and politics should mix. You only get a finite amount of time on this planet, and that would seem like a dreadful waste of it. Why not just play some table tennis, have some Battenberg, or watch one of my non-political videos, like this classic, in which I took a look at the 7 worst teams in the history of the FIFA World Cup. Okay, for those of you who are still around, it is my humble opinion that it's pretty much impossible to separate football and politics, and those of you who have watched any of my documentaries will no doubt concur. Even at this point in time, we have seen 2 Premier League footballers dragged into quote-unquote political debates in the forms of Mesut Ozil and Marcus Rashford. And whilst I don't think concentration camps or feeding hungry kids should even be political debates, more humanitarian ones, both players have discovered that they are. A year ago, I made a video taking a look at 7 of the world's most political football clubs, which is my 10th most viewed video of all time. Almost 3 years ago, I made a video about 7 footballers who became politicians, which might just be my least viewed video of all time. So how this one will do is just about anyone's guess. I should say I won't be including anyone who featured in that second video, so this is a video about players with outspoken political views rather than those who are actively involved in politics or hold office. To be honest, I'm not quite sure what most political really means. I think that's a pretty stupid title. This is just 7 interesting examples of footballers who haven't been shy of expressing their political viewpoints. But what's done is done. Here are 7 footballers with outspoken political views. Josep Sivenich. Somehow this is a story that I didn't know about until researching this video, but strap in because it's a wild one. Josep Sivenich is probably best known to most of you as the Croatian international who was shown 3 yellow cards by English referee Graham Poll before finally getting sent off at the 2006 World Cup. Sivenich's red card came against Australia, and Sivenich was actually born and raised in Australia, which might be worth bearing in mind ahead of what I'm about to say. Sivenich is alleged to be a fascist and or neo-Nazi, and I should point out that I say alleged because Sivenich has denied these claims. In 2013, after Croatia beat Iceland 2-0, Sivenich directed the Croatia fans in a chant of Za dom spremni, which means, for homeland, ready. That sounds harmless enough, you might be thinking, but Za dom spremni was the salute used by Croatia's ruling fascist Ustasi party during World War II, when Croatia was effectively a Nazi puppy state. Za dom spremni then is the Croatian equivalent of the Nazi salute Sieg Heil. Sivenich's defence flip-flopped a bit from doubling down to claiming ignorance, and having read an interview with him, I can wholly believe his ignorance defence. However, in 2016, Sivenich reportedly provided funding for a revisionist film claiming Croatia's role in the Holocaust had been greatly overplayed that was very popular among Croatian fascists but was widely rubbished by historians. Some suggest Sivenich's Croatian nationalism and fascism is an overcompensation for the fact that he represented Croatia but was neither born nor raised there, and even his parents lived in Bosnia before they moved to Australia. It's all very strange, and Sivenich now manages Croatia's under-19 team. Cristiano Lucarelli. From an alleged fascist and apparent funder of Holocaust-denying film productions to a proud communist who supposedly once had the tune of the red flag as his ringtone on his mobile phone, there are no half measures in the early parts of this 7. If you want to find political footballers who are outspoken on either side of the political aisle, you should adjust your compasses and head to Italy. Whilst players with fascist sympathies in Italy like Paolo Di Canio and Christian Abbiati get most of the attention, I thought I'd bring you a communist from the country shaped like a boot, since we like to mix things up here at HITC Sevens. Cristiano Lucarelli was born and raised in Livorno, the city which gave birth to the Italian Communist Party in 1921, and has been renowned for its left-wing politics ever since. Lucarelli was also a Livorno fan and long-time player, with the club famous for its left-wing ultras. Lucarelli is very much a man of his environment, having openly stated that he supports the ideals of communism and once claiming that Livorno don't get decisions from referees due to the fact that they're communists. Lucarelli once lifted up his shirt to reveal a photograph of Che Guevara after scoring for Italy's under-21s, which led to him being blacklisted and not called up by the Italian senior team for 8 years. Lucarelli claimed the gesture wasn't political, although I'm not quite sure what else it could be. He got the chance to meet the Argentine revolutionary's daughter in 2005 and even tried to set up a Livorno charity game in Cuba, but the plans never came to fruition. Felipe Melo. I've grouped the next two together since they both concern politics in the same country, but two greatly contrasting viewpoints. Felipe Melo is a man best known in Europe for his aggressive midfield performances and occasionally rash tackles. So much so that when the pandemic struck and the toilet roll challenge took off, Melo just slide tackled a toilet roll rather than attempting to do any keepy-uppies. The 37-year-old veteran returned to Brazil in 2017 when he signed for Palmeiras, and it was also around that time that he started to take an interest in Brazilian politics. Like a number of prominent Brazilian players, such as Kaká and Ronaldinho, Melo endorsed the populist candidate Jair Bolsonaro ahead of Brazil's 2018 presidential election. I first came across Bolsonaro in a 2013 documentary series with Stephen Fry about homophobia, back when he was considered more of a fringe figure in Brazilian politics, often branded as being far-right, although he was still a congressman. Bolsonaro, that is, not Stephen Fry. Bolsonaro has previously described black activists as animals and said that they should go back to the zoo, told the Brazilian congresswoman that he wouldn't rape her because she was ugly, and said that he would rather his son die in an accident than come out as being a homosexual. None of that is enough to turn off Brazilian footballers like Cafu, Lucas Moura and indeed Felipe Melo though, and Bolsonaro won Brazil's 2018 presidential election. Melo dedicated a goal that he scored against Chapecoense to the president, who is himself a Palmeiras fan, in 2019. Melo also named one of his sons after Gary Lineker, but he might have to see if he can get that changed by deed poll once he discovers that Lineker's politics aren't really aligned with his own. Juninho. Whilst Jair Bolsonaro has enjoyed widespread support from a number of Brazilian footballers, particularly those who are evangelical Christians, there are some who have fought back against the tide. Arguably none more strongly than Juninho, the greatest free-kick taker of the modern era. Most of you will best remember Juninho from his time at Lyon, where no set piece seemed to be too far out or from too tight of an angle to prevent him from finding the back of the net. Juninho won 40 caps for Brazil, where he retired, but he's now back in France, serving as sporting director at Lyon. Although he may not live in Brazil anymore, Juninho hasn't been afraid to wade in on Brazil's political pressure cooker. A long-time anti-racist, Juninho has stated that Brazil has thousands of George Floyds, he rallied people against electing Bolsonaro in 2018, and he has been critical of the president's handling of the coronavirus pandemic. Juninho has said that he has had to cut ties with 80 to 90% of his friends and family due to disagreements regarding Bolsonaro, although he claims some have expressed regret for having voted for him in light of Brazil's response to the pandemic. Maybe Juninho will follow other Brazilian internationals like Socrates and Romário into politics at some stage and challenge Bolsonaro directly. It's a long shot, but then again, Juninho was always rather good at them. Karl Henry. It's pretty rare for English footballers to express outright party political support, especially since British politics has become so polarised over the last few years, so one suspects that agents and sponsors wouldn't be best pleased about it. Frank Lampard voiced his support for David Cameron before the 2010 general election, and Sol Campbell wanted to stand as a Conservative candidate for the Mayor of London. Meanwhile, Stan Collymore and Joe Lolly have been quite vocal in their criticisms of the Tories and in their support for Labour leaders or the party in general. No player has more vociferously supported the Conservatives, as far as I'm aware, than Karl Henry. For those of you based outside of the UK who might not know much about UK politics, the Conservatives are Britain's most successful political party, currently led by Alexander Boris de Pfeffel Johnson, better known as Boris Johnson, and they have been in power in the UK over the last 10 years. Oh, and Karl Henry, since non-UK viewers are also unlikely to know who he is, was an occasionally dirty box-to-box midfield all-rounder who played in both the Championship and the Premier League. Henry first waded into politics in public, as far as I'm aware, in the build-up to the 2015 general election, with his support for the Conservatives and claims that Labour would take all your money if you were successful and give it to those who weren't, leading to this famous Twitter exchange. Henry later got into an argument with Stan Collymore on the social media site, who accused him of forgetting his roots, and he has been pretty political online ever since. Henry has continued to support the Conservatives, along with the Brexit Party. He has advocated for a no-deal Brexit, and he has been critical of the Black Lives Matter movement. Even he has broken ranks to back Marcus Rashford's free school meals campaign now. Jeff Cameron. From a right winger on one side of the pond to another one on the other, Jeff Cameron and Karl Henry are football's answer to Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan in so many respects. Cameron may share the surname of a recent UK Prime Minister and have been living in the UK for the last 8 years, but most of his political pronouncements have come in regard to one Donald J. Trump. Despite being an immigrant to the United Kingdom, Cameron has been critical of immigration into the United States, and he supported President Trump's travel ban in 2017, commonly referred to as the Muslim travel ban. Cameron has retweeted Trump election ads, celebrated his election night success in 2016, and told US voters that they needed to stop drinking Hillary Clinton's Kool-Aid, labelling the Democratic candidate as a crook. Cameron is a bit of an outlier in terms of the US soccer scene in supporting Trump, publicly at least, although he enjoys plenty of support from US athletes in other sports, perhaps most notably from retired golfer Jack Nicklaus. Cameron, who previously played for Stoke City and is now at Queen's Park Rangers, has also tweeted Gary Lineker on a couple of occasions about Brexit. He often interacts with tweets by right-wing US commentators, and he even tweeted Democratic Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, asking her to debate squeaky-voiced former Breitbart editor Ben Shapiro. Hey, we've all been there after a few too many shandies, tweeting strangers and challenging them to debate other strangers. Slavin Bilic. To give some symmetry and sense of completion to this 7, which started with a former Croatian international, we end with one as well. Together, in this video, we have been on a journey from confused fascists to central midfielders who seem predominantly worried about potential rises to the additional rate of tax, but we end with a man who is happy to share his wealth around. Former Croatian international and Bundesliga and Premier League defender Slavin Bilic is probably best known to most of you as a manager, previously of Croatia's national team and West Ham, and now at West Bromwich Albion. There is a long tradition of socialist managers in the top flight of English football, including some of the most successful managers we have seen in the English game, from Sir Alex Ferguson and Brian Clough to Sir Matt Busby and Bill Shankly. But is Bilic a socialist? It's long been reported that he is, so The Athletic put the question to him not long ago, and here's how he responded. What does a socialist mean? In my ex-country, Yugoslavia, or in Croatia, if you're a socialist, first of all it means that you don't believe in God, because in those kinds of countries, church was forbidden in some of them. If that is the case, then I'm not a socialist. Is it socialist or utopist? I think nobody should starve. There is enough for everybody in the world to be able to have a chance to live a normal life. Being a socialist means you care for people. If that's the case, then I hope that most of the people are socialists. That seems like a happy enough note to end on, the idea that nobody should starve, that everybody should get a fair crack at life, and that we ought to have some empathy for people, regardless of other political viewpoints. So that is it for today's video. Thank you all for watching as ever. Give us a like if you enjoyed the video, let me know your thoughts in the comments, try to keep things reasonably civil, and make sure that you are subscribed and have notifications turned on for HITC Sevens. You can also follow me on Twitter or Instagram, or indeed both, where the username is just at HITC Sevens on both platforms.